So, this is probably really quite ill-advised, but, having a drink, a celebratory drink, sit down and a little chat. And it sort of goes to, recently I brought up that my dad was dying of cancer. Um, Obviously a fairly traumatic thing, impacts me greatly. Uh, and I knew that when I did that this was essentially putting it into the public domain, and that there would be all of the bottom feeders who would just use this as a cheap way to get at me, right? And boy, did they not disappoint. And yes, 100% the social justice warrior community, the people claiming the high moral ground, are the same people who are happy to use my dad dying of cancer as a cheap point scoring exercise. And it's like, for fuck's sake, even Westboro Baptist Church, right? The most lowest scum of the lot. They at least wait until people have died before they're jerky to the relatives, right? In this case, no, they didn't even wait that long. Anyway, so yeah, the social justice warrior community, they were all over this as some sort of cheap point scoring exercise. Um, and these are the people claiming the high moral ground that, oh no, how terrible it is that people get harassed on the internet. And these are the people who are willing to use, for fuck's sake, someone's father dying of cancer as a way to get at people. Anyway, so why am I having a drink to celebrate today? Well, turns out he's been in hospital for the last couple of weeks with suspected liver failure. Scans, nothing really quite gelled with that, but that's their working assumption. And so today they put a tube in a stent to see if they can unclog one of his bile ducts, and that seems to have worked, which means that it's not liver failure. On the grand scheme of things, though, it is still very much celebrating when your house is burned down but your photo albums have survived. Um, it's not good news. It's just a hell of a lot better than it could have been, which is why I'm having a drink. So, cheers, Dad. But the one thing that I did take pleasure in, and I mean real pleasure, was watching these same bastards who were happy to do what they did, to turn on each other and eat each other. So there's been this recent meltdown in this sort of social justice warrior community, and they have all that viciousness which was directed at me, they're now directed on each other. And I have got to admit, I took a certain guilty pleasure in watching that. And there are people who actually say to me, look, why do you even bother with these losers? Why don't you just ignore them? They're nothing. They're not going to impact anything. And the simple answer is no. These people are a plague, and they're a plague on academia. And if you don't believe me, right? So this was, what was that? This is the University of California Office of the President. It's a tool for recognizing microaggressions and the messages that they send. Right? There's a whole list of these things. And this is University of California, right? This is not some sort of small ass chump change thing. This is places like Berkeley, right? And this is one of the ones they've got up here. Myth of meritocracy. The statement which asserts that race or gender does not play a role in life successes. For example, the issue of faculty demographics. So, and this is exactly what it says. This, according to them, is a microaggression. Right? This is also tantamount to racism. Is I believe the most qualified person should get the job, or of course he'll get tenure even though he hasn't published much. He's black. men and women have equal opportunities for achievement. Gender plays no role in who we hire, which is of course bollock. There was this recent study that showed that women have a 2-to-1 advantage in faculty appointments. Anyway, right, so statements like, I believe the most qualified person should get the job, is sending the message that people of colour are given extra unfair benefits because of their race. The level playing field is so even that women cannot make it. The problem is with them. People of colour are lazy and incompetent and need to work harder. And it's like, how the fuck do you get that from, I believe the most qualified person should get the job? Right? This is not some Mickey Mouse organization. This covers things like this covers things like Berkeley, one of the most top-rated universities in the world. And they also had this thing recently about this, that they're a Nobel laureate, something or other Hunt. And yeah, he made some statement, the men and women shouldn't work together because, they fall in love. Some wishy-washy shit like that they fall in love, or you fall in love with them, or they cry when you criticize them. It was something like that. And given the choice between that and something like saying that I believe the most qualified person should get the job is a microaggression that should be weeded out of academia. Give me the sexist firebrand any day, right? Because what academia is about is about pushing the boundaries, right, of the unknown. Right, you have to be able to stand up and challenge stuff. You have to be able to have that freedom, right? In this case, I think he's wrong, right? There really isn't that much of a problem with falling in love with people in the lab, but he should have the right to say it. And believe me, the guy has earned his chops. Once you've got a Nobel Prize to sort of say, well, yeah, but he's some sort of no talent loser, isn't going to hold water. The guy has obviously got some talent behind him, right? Doesn't mean he can't be wrong. We can all be wrong, right? But to actually give me achievers, give me people who can win a Nobel Prize over, I mean, for fuck's sake, the University of California officer as the president. I believe the most qualified person should get the job is a microaggression that's discriminating against black people and women. Which is why I actually do this stuff on feminism. This stuff is it's a plague, and sooner or later there is going to have to be an organised pushback against it. And that's going to have to come from people who can actually make such sensible arguments. They've had years of this, where they've had their women's studies, or now their gender studies, and people have left them alone and get on with their speculative bullshit, because it didn't really interfere with anyone, right? But now it is, and it's going to be if there is no pushback, it's going to spread. I mean, it's already in places like Berkeley, right? So, and for me, if you like, academia is one of these places where you really can't tolerate this sort of, but my feelings are more important than what's correct, right? If you can demonstrate it, it really doesn't matter. And to take the most firebrand example, if you can demonstrate that race is actually a significant factor in achievement, in some cases that's not terribly difficult, in that if you take a look at, say, all of the fastest long distance runners in the world, it's something like 9 out of 10 or 6 out of 10, some huge fraction of the world's long distance runners are Kenyans. Now, are you saying, and it's not just from Kenya, it's some sort of tiny plateau area in Kenya, right? There clearly are aspects to this. And it all gets, the thing that pisses me off about this is it gets sucked into people want to know, but are they genetically inferior, yada, yada, yada. And do these people not understand some of the most basic aspects about civilization? Spock had something along these lines. The needs of the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. What it basically means is that people in groups are more effective than individuals working on their own. The whole is greater than the sum of its components. And that's one of the biggest, in military terms, it would be called a force amplifier. It's one of the biggest force amplifiers out there, right? To the point where, let's just take a random example. That there's a bunch of super intelligent blue people, right? But the blue people can only work as individuals, right? The fact that they're all super intelligent makes almost no difference because they all work alone. Whereas we, a bunch of mediocre apes, because we work together, we can do things like put men on the moon, something that the super intelligent blue people will never do. And that's one of the things that bugs me about these people who look for tiny differences in IQs in race and all that sort of thing, is you're really looking in the wrong place, because IQ is not a great amplifier like that. What you really want to be looking for is things which are big amplifiers, which is, for the large part, is the ability to make societies. Anyway, but anyway, if you wanted the freedom to actually make such arguments, you should be able to do it within academia. You shouldn't be. That's the whole reason why they gave people tenure in the first place, is that you wouldn't be limited by this sort of thing. Anyway, I think I've rambled enough. So, yeah, to a good day.